2011 Toyota Tacoma. Going to be changing the bearing on an idler pulley. This is the idler pulley that is right next to the alternator. I believe they call that the number 2 idler pulley. We're going to take that off. The reason we're changing it is the alternator locked up. And when the alternator locked up, the belt just spun, and the belt literally melted right in half till it broke. White smoke was bellowing out underneath the hood and everything. So if you look down here at the alternator, let me show you this. So there's the alternator. I can't even turn it. Can't turn it whatsoever. And whenever I was looking at it, I noticed that the idler pulley here, it's tough to turn. That should just free spin. So we're going to take that off, and I'm going to show you the easiest and cheapest way to replace just the bearing. We're not going to replace the whole idler pulley. Now the bolt that holds that is a 14 millimeter. So all I'm going to do is reach down here and get on that. That thing was tight. I would highly recommend, okay, at least it's loose. Now I like these 6-point wrenches because if you got a bolt or nut that is really tight, it will definitely help prevent from rounding the head. 12 points are nice because you got more options as far as how many different angles you can get on it, but if you get on a tight bolt or nut, you have more of a chance of rounding it off. So here's the idler. We're gonna have to clean it up too. Let me okay, I'm gonna get the camera set up so that you can get a good eye about this. Look how rusted that is. Okay, let me get the camera set up. Okay, so we got the idler here. So whenever you take this off, you're going to have a washer on the inside. Then you're going to have a bushing and another washer. So don't lose those, and remember how they come off here. So the bearing is pressed in from the front in. So we're going to press it out from the back. Now obviously this bearing's bad, so you don't have to worry about trying to save it. Easiest way to do it, just take a socket. And I hate pounding on my sockets, to be honest with you. And I'm gonna lift this up just a little bit. But these aren't pressed in very tight. So take you a socket. Normally you don't want to pound on a bearing. If you're pressing a bearing in, and you're pressing it in on an outer diameter, you're going to press on the outer race. If you're pressing it on like a shaft that's going on like that, you're going to press on the inner race. You don't want to press on the opposite race that you're pressing it into, because you're going to mess up the bearing. So we're going to knock this one out of here, and it's about as easy as it gets. And I like to use a dead blow. So here's the old bearing. Now this is I believe the factory bearing. It's an NSK bearing, made in China, which was kind of surprising to me. Now what I bought, so the size of this bearing is 12 millimeters by 40 millimeter by, can't remember what the inner is. Hold on, let's find out. There's number two idler pulleys on this vehicle. They both should take this same bearing. So you got 40 millimeter on the outer, 17 millimeter for the inner, and 12 millimeter is what they classify this bearing. I bought a 10-pack for $12. So each one of these bearings are just slightly over $1. That was shipped to the house. So I was going to buy a Timken bearing, which is considered to be one of the better bearings that you can get. It was about $18. I figured, you know, that's a China-made bearing that came from the factory. These are quality bearings as far as inexpensive Chinese bearings go. I've got 10 of them. You saw how fast this is to press the old bearing out, and I'm about to show you how fast it is to press the new one in. I mean, to me it's a no-brainer. So to press the new one in, get you a socket that just fits the bearing. And I say press, it's more like pounding. Now you can use a press. If you got a press, I've got a press, but it's literally not worth me moving everything to get to my press. So I'm gonna tap it in with the hammer. That's it. So there it is. So now I'll be able to bolt this back up. And I've got me a brand new bearing in the idler. Now I'm going to go ahead and clean this up before I bolt it on, because it's got old belt. Since that belt was literally melting, it's melted parts of that belt to this idler pulley. But that's how fast and easy it is to replace just the bearing in the idler. Now you can buy these idlers. I think they're about $15 each. That I think was the cheapest that I found. I found some that was $35. Or you can buy bearings as cheap as about $1.50, or you can get a 12-pack or a 10-pack for $12, which is what I did. That way I've got extra bearings. If another one goes out, and if it happens to take the same bearing, I've got them. This is a pretty common size bearing. There's a lot of idlers that take this bearing, so if any of my other vehicles start getting a noisy idler, I might have a bearing now that'll fit those. But anyway, I'm going to bolt this back on, and I just wanted to show you how easy it is to replace just the bearing in your idler pulleys. Okay guys, it's all bolted back on. And I highly recommend nice and quiet now and spins free. I highly recommend that when you take yours off, if you have a 6-point wrench or socket, to use that, because mine was on really tight, and I really think that it would have rounded out if I would have tried using a 12-point. Yeah, I think there's, see that idler right there? They call that the number 2 idler too, and I think it's an identical idler. And I believe that idler takes the same exact bearing. So I've got plenty of bearings for that idler if I need to. I think there's 2 other idlers also. There's a tensioner and another idler, and I think those bearings are different. But anyway, yeah, for $1.20, I was able to replace that bearing just in the idler pulley versus a minimum of $15, or as high as, I think I saw one for $35 for that same idler pulley. And you know, I've got now I did spend $12, but I've got nine additional bearings for future use. So just something to keep in mind if you replace, and that's not just for these idlers. If you've got an idler, as long as you've got time, if you can't figure out the size before taking it off, take it off. knock the bearing out, see what size bearing it is, get online, do some research, and you know, find you just the bearing. And if you can replace just the bearing, a lot of times that's going to be a lot cheaper, and you know, it's going to work just as good. And if you get a pack of bearings, you'll have bearings for future use. Anyway, that's about all I've got, I guess. You guys take care. So now I get to put an alternator on. I'll do a video on that also. And so the story with the alternator, while I'm here, I'm going to keep this alternator. That's a factory alternator. I'm going to keep it, buy a rebuild kit for it, which includes new bearings, which is what's locked up on this, more than likely. Once I get it off and tore apart, I'll be able to verify that it's that forward bearing that is probably seized up. And if that's all it is, I'm going to order a rebuild kit. Because this alternator is a 130 amp alternator. The one I ordered is also 130. I think it's 130. It might be 140 amp. So, you know, I'd like to, for $30, I can get a rebuild kit for that alternator, which actually includes new brushes, regulator, bearings, and I think a diode trio. So, yeah. Anyway, that's the story with that. I'll do a video on taking that alternator, or replacing the alternator. Anyway, you guys take care.